All right. Hello. Good afternoon. So Danilo is not able to join us today. We have a lot of work to do before we release some stuff. But I got all the time in the world. Let's see. So what I thought we could do is just talk about what we did last time, review what we've done here, and we talked about actually inviting Alex, another colleague of ours, to kind of jump in and just look at the code, um, and kind of ask questions to kind of test how well this approach like allows you to infer like what's happening and what are the different things and where do you find things and so on and so on. But for now, we're just going to review this and make sure we finish up the stuff we did last time. And what I did here is that I installed impact context and impact signal. So now it's two different packages. I haven't gotten an email from GitHub yet about the npm org that's going to allow me to use the impact scope. So we'll do this for now. Maybe it will just end up like that. And then what we're going to do now is just check what we're doing here. Let's just bring this up. So what we did last time was working on when we click this, we should get the git status and it should actually produce a message here, which it doesn't do right now because we had a bug. And if we go in here and we look at the branch context, we worked on creating these states for the AI suggested commit message. So you have a stale state, which means that something happened that requires you to produce a new commit message, or the AI should suggest a new commit message. But it should only happen, it shouldn't always happen. Like it should only happen if you're actually looking at the sidebar. So that's what we were testing. And then we had some issues with observe. It's really interesting. Basically, it was related to observing a signal while also setting the signal. So specifically this part. So here we are setting the current suggested commit message, but we're also reading the current suggested commit message. So when it's stale, we're going to use the existing message if it exists. And that can cause a loop in certain situations where you're changing it, but you just observed it. So that means when you change it, the observe will trigger again because you're also observing what you're setting. So we did a little bit of research and I did some reflections, and to me it makes sense that when you set the value of a signal within observe, it basically means you should never observe it. So you don't have to think about that as a developer. It should just naturally work out. But there might be other aspects of this that we haven't taken into account. So that's pending still. But what I'm curious about now is that what we're doing here is that we're looking at the current suggested commit message, which should be stale. And what should happen now is when it's stale and we move to the Git sidebar, it should create a new commit message. But it doesn't seem to do that. So maybe I did something wrong with my fix. So we're going to figure that out. So we have our current suggested commit message. I'm just going to see if this even runs. What the fuck? Let's see. Connecting. Yeah, so that's not even running. That's interesting. Does that mean... Oh, do we actually have... Oh, sorry. We don't have any changed files. We should go to our chicken soup. Chicken... Is it here? Chicken soup? I think it's called chicken soup. Yeah, of course. We don't have any changed files, so of course it shouldn't produce a message. So we're loading the Git panel. Yeah, now we have some changed files. Interesting. Okay, it still didn't work though. So it was loading the Git status and then current suggested commit message value. Yeah. This is really interesting. Why doesn't this work? Because we are changing the current sidebar panel. Does this observe even run? Weird. That's the thing here. It's like we're kind of evaluating API here, and I've been in this situation many times. It's like if it's tricky to get the API like working, it can feel like you've created the wrong API, and sometimes maybe that's true. But the point is that when this works as it's supposed to, none of this friction would have been there, and it would just have worked. But this isn't even running. Like, there's no what the fuck here at all, which I find extremely curious. Why is this not even running? Did I... is my code even running? Oops. Let's see. Yeah, it's running. Why isn't the... what the hell? Why isn't this running? Like, that should trigger immediately. I think I made a mistake. Yeah, but the other one's running. So observe. How can one of them run and not the other? It's a very simple code. What the hell? None of them are running. Okay, I must have done something very wrong. Let's jump into impact and figure out what the hell I did wrong here. Oh, okay, let's install the new macro VM. So as you can see, I've changed my structure here. Also getting a new editor version. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, we also have a new editor version. Oh, this is a bug. Like, we're testing service workers. This isn't behaving like it's supposed to. Failed updating. Encountered a network error. Well, you're not wrong. Cache expired. Huh. Encountered a network error. Well, it did recover. That's a good thing. But what the hell is that? Encountered failed updating cache. I wonder what that error was. Like, of course, that can happen. The question is more like, what should we do? Okay, I'm actually still working on that feature, so I'll make a mental note up here, and let us look at let us look at signal. Let's bring these down. And what the hell did I do with the observe? Where are you? Observe. Oh, look at that. We're not calling the updater. My bad. I must have changed something and then I lost track of that. So we should, of course, immediately call the updater when we create observe, and I didn't do that. Cool. I changed the package version. Let's create a PR out of that. And you might say now, why don't you have tests? I don't like having tests when I explore APIs. That's something I like to, especially working on APIs at this abstraction level and this size. It's not like, it's more important to just move fast and figure out how you want it to work, and then you test it by actually implementing something, because then you get both like testing the actual implementation but also the API surface. And then when you have something running, you can just release it, and then if bugs appear, then you start writing tests. Okay, cool. Let's move to the main branch. And here we want, there we have our updater back and running. It's building the thing, and all we really want to do is go to, this was signal, because I didn't have, I'm wondering, do I have build as part of my setup tasks? No, I don't. Yeah, no, I think it's better for me to just do it like this. So I'll always, even if I had it as part of the setup task, I would still probably build just to make sure I actually deploy latest version, or publish the latest version. Cool. So now we hopefully fixed that. So let's, oh yeah. What were we doing? Yeah, I need to change my package JSON. Impact signal was 4. Let's reinstall our dependencies. And let's refresh this one. I'm a bit curious about what just happened. Like, why did it rerun the setup tasks? Was it because I installed dependencies? Is that something we... I wonder. I think maybe we have this watcher on... CodeSandbox and local. Yeah, I wonder why it reran the setup tasks. Anyways, Okay, let's see now. You'll have to excuse all this service worker stuff. It's because I'm running an inline preview in the background, which is also something that we haven't released yet. But it's there, and that's why we have these logs. I might need to restart the dev server. I'm not sure if it picks up the latest installed version of the package. Wait. Oh, what? Does it still have? No, it should be good now. Let's see. It's stating that 5173 is in use. Why is it saying that? That's weird. It happens sometimes that dev servers aren't closing correctly. So I need to restart the branch to get things running again. That's a good thing about dog fooding your own product, especially as complex as this. It's pretty epic, the infrastructure we have, but of course, like, it's infrastructure running VMs, and we have our abstractions around those VMs, and there's a lot of moving parts. And nice. I think that's okay now. And of course, things can go wrong. Oh, come on. There we go. Yeah, now we're getting our what the fucks. Loading git panel. Yeah, and there we got our message. Nice. So if I move back and forward again now, you can see that I have the same message. But if I were to open this chicken soup, CodeSandbox, TestSandbox. Let's see, what are we going to do? We're going to first just go and change a file and see that the thing updates. Get a TestSandbox chicken soup. Okay, so we're here, we're listening to git status updates, and I actually have to change a file here. And I can really do that by just discarding a change. Let's see. Moving back here, we should get like a git status update, and it produced a new title. Nice. But if I move back and forward, we still have the same thing. It doesn't produce a new one. But if I go here, and let's revert something else, we'll discard those changes. And let's make sure that we actually got the update. So when I move back here now, it should also produce a new one. And it did. Nice. So this is working as intended now. And what else did we want to do? Yeah, maybe we can review the code quickly again, because as I mentioned, like, we met a few hiccups here. And the point is that what we're doing here is that we're observing whenever there are changes to the actual git status. And when there are, we check if there are any files. And if there are any files, we're putting our current suggested commit message into a stale state, where we might already have a message, or it might be the first time we get the git status, which means we don't have a message. And then we also add the files related to that. And then we yeah. And then we have this other observer which checks do we have a stale suggested commit message? And if we do, and we're also on the Git sidebar, then we go and update the suggested commit message, which happens here. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. And that's kind of, it makes sense. It does make sense. Great. Okay, cool. So what should we do now? I was thinking about cleaning up a little bit because we have our branch context, and now we're kind of just shoving everything into that branch context. So I thought we would create a folder out of it, and then we're going to move things like, oh, I know what we're going to do. We're going to refactor this because working on the family app, I've discovered something. So here you see that we have like get git status promise. Now what's interesting is that what I discovered is that when you use a getter, that should really reflect a synchronous value. It's like you're just accessing a property. But if you're accessing a promise, it should be named like fetch git status. You should call it as a method because that highlights much better like its asynchronous nature, and also it helps with that you're getting like the promise, and then you're checking the status of the promise, and then what I mean to say is that it helps with defining variables and stuff. So I think we should refactor that. And what we can also do is, yeah, do what I just said. How would I split that up? So we have a branch context. So I would have like a git namespace. So you would use the branch context and then git, and then yeah, let's just do that. So we can do that first. Let's create a use branch context folder, shove that in there and rename it to index. And then we'll create a new one called git. And this is just going to export a function called create git. And since we receive our picture instance on the branch context, we need to pass that in when we like create git. So this would be iPicture client. And then we're going to return an API for that. And what we can do now, or should be able to do now, let's split this up. So this is git and this is our index. So what we can do is, so current sidebar panel would be behind layout, for example. But let's say create git, and then we're going to pass it picture. So it has that to work with. And then we're going to move that thing in there. Why the hell is this just a commit message? Yeah, let's move all of these in here. There we go. Git status. We're going to put that in there. Cleanup needs to be imported. And we're going to move the observer and the AI and all of this stuff in there. Observe. Oh yeah, so now it's getting interesting. So this is exactly what I wanted to explore, because these contexts, they can be as big as you want, since you're just observing what you're using, and that's like a good thing. But the bad thing is like, how do you compose it together? So now I wanted to like give it some more structure. So I'm saying like I use a factory to create the Git API that we're going to expose here. So maybe we can just do that. Well, first let's move this over here. And then we're going to just say Git like that. But now we have this current sidebar panel, and oh, that's actually going to be here. Oops. And it's needed as well by this factory or like this API. So now I also have to pass that one in. And this is where it gets a little bit. I don't like the composition model where you have these factories and you just give them this huge options object as for defining its dependencies. You can argue that it's better in the sense that you know where the dependencies are coming from. It's not like some magical injection. But at the same time, it's just, I don't like it. So that's what I liked with the old API, where you didn't have context, but you had like multiple stores. Because then I would just create a new Git store. And I could just use the layout, for example, to get access to the current sidebar panel. But now we're using context, which has its benefits because there's less entry points or less points of exposure of state and state management. So I think this is better, but I wish there was like a better way to deal with this, because now I have to like pass the current sidebar panel signal in here. Oh, this should also be over here. Yeah, I just don't like it. Because now I have to like type something here. And what if I were to move this into its own thing, like layout? Let's just do that for the sake of exploration. So I would export function create layout. And then let's move that one over here. And then we're going to, I have a tendency to insert parentheses instead of the curly things. It's funny to me. And then we'll just do layout here and we'll return. Yeah, and then sidebar panel. Like that. We have our signal here. And we're going to do layout, create layout. This doesn't need anything. Cool. Now it's even worse, right? Because now I need Git to have access to the layout. So now I kind of have to think about, we need to instantiate the layout first. And then how does this just get the whole layout, or does it only get, and that's the thing, right? Now the current sidebar panel, you don't have access to the signal. So we can't observe, can we? Oh, sorry, we can. Yeah, but I guess that's the stumbling part. It's like, if I were to like consume layout.current sidebar panel and pass that in, I would just get the current value. I wouldn't observe it. So that means I need to pass in the whole layout, which is fine, but then how would I define the typing for that? So now I kind of have to, like, I could like do the return type of create layout, or I could like just do current sidebar panel. That's the property I need. And that's what I mean. It's like, that's why I like injection better, because you don't have to reason about how am I going to build up this. Like if it was a class, it would be like the constructor params. And in this case, it's just a function. And I just don't like, because now I could just pass picture, but now I had 2 arguments. So should I pass 2 arguments, or should I start using an object? And then how do I consume the current sidebar panel? Do I just consume that value because that's the only thing I need? So I'm more explicit about what it needs. But if I do that, this wouldn't work because I actually need to access this property. So then it's like, okay, but then how do I type the return type here? I don't like it. I just don't like it. I wonder if there's a way for us to still call it context, but you still have the stores composition, like the injection stuff. The problem with the old API is that so the problem with the old API wasn't really the stores composition. The problem was consuming what was called the scope. So from a component, some component, you would do like, so if we were using the old API here, I would do like git use git store, for example, and then layout, use layout store. The problem, like this looks fine, right? The problem is that it lacks discoverability, because you can have these stores everywhere, right? And you can have so many of them. And it's the same problem with hooks. You just have a bunch of hooks, and it's really hard for a new developer to go in and figure out what hooks are available to me. But when you just have that context, you can say git layout equals use branch context. So you have that discoverability, like what do I actually have within the branch context that's available to any component within the branch context. But maybe there's a way that we can still like compose contexts together, kind of thing, where even though we expose these stores through like what we call a scope, maybe creating a context isn't a single context. Yeah. But yeah, it's still weird, I think. God damn it. How do I want to think about this? So that's what I kind of like about the idea of what's it called? Procedural programming. At least to some extent, it kind of it highlights this approach where you don't split stuff into functions. You just write it. So what I would do here instead, to kind of embrace a procedural, was that what I call it? Procedural programming, is that you would how would you do this? So we would, for example, say that, okay, the current sidebar panel. Yeah, how would we do this? No, that wouldn't really work here, because we have a common public API we want to return. Like you could do something like let layout, and then you would say this should be, and then you would have the type for it, whatever object, and then you would kind of do something like, this is my layout functionality, and you kind of put that inside a scope. So you're kind of just emphasizing that this is some piece of code. But what we're doing here, we're not doing like, it's not procedural in the sense that you ask it to do something and then it runs through stuff step by step. Like, of course, code does that, but that's not conceptually what we're doing. What we're doing here is that we're building a public interface. So this is just not one thing happening after the other. These are like completely different things happening, and they could happen like even like in parallel, at least to some extent. So yeah, I'm not sure how I would do this. Like this creates too much friction for me. So if I were able to in like Git to just say maybe an API, like just to suggest something. So maybe a context can be just a function like this, but you could also define a context as a set of multiple functions. So you would say layout Git, and those would be like their own contexts. So for so layout, how would I do this? Yeah, but then I would also need branch. So branch context. So you lose some flexibility here because these are like considered flat on the context while these are more nested. But then again, how would I consume these within each other? Yeah, and it just adds API surface. Like, I don't like it. I would much rather have a pattern that makes it easy to do this kind of stuff. So maybe that pattern should be just like a branch context. You have to use an object because it's tied to the props of the provider. Maybe that could be the... So you would have to say... You would have to do this. Like, this is just how it works. And then we would do layout, and then we would say layout, and then that's the return type of create layout. And now we need to pass in the layout here. Maybe this is fine. Maybe that is like just the pattern. Okay, let's do that for now. And now we can say layout current sidebar panel equals Git. Okay, I guess I'm happy with that. What? Yeah, you shouldn't be complaining, but you are. Let's restart the TypeScript language server. So we would go and grab Git here, and then we would say, yeah, let's finish the refactor. So I don't think it should be Git status promise. I think it's completely fine to say, we can call it Git status promise here, but what we should do is rather say like fetch Git status or get Git status, but fetch indicates more that it's even more that it's asynchronous. And sometimes this fetch might be just like we grab the, where are we? Here we have branches. So we do fetch branch. Is there like multiple fetch branch? Oh, I guess I decided to do it like this. Yeah, I don't like this either. I want this to be Or was it? Yeah. Cool. I just want the implementation there. And the same for initialize picture. So that we have all our variables up at the top here, and then we can rather have our implementations down here. Cool. That way we kind of see what we're working with. Again, I can split this up as well. But the point is that when you fetch a branch, it's obvious that you're dealing with a promise and a fetching state. And we're doing the same here. Even though the get status promise is like immediately triggered, it's not like you're because of calling the method that we're producing the promise, but we're still fetching the get status. And we have current suggested commit message, that's synchronous value. And then getting, and this is the interesting thing, because fetch get status makes a lot of sense because we're fetching the data, but then we have this mutation state, which is also just a promise. But you're not like fetch suggested message. That's what we're doing here. So this is the promise of actually getting it. For me, it's just naming, like naming conventions. How would you? I really like that we're calling it like getting suggested message, because that's what the promise represents. So maybe that should, but it doesn't. It's because it would be weird to like fetch getting suggested message. Yeah, I would just use it as this, because that's the thing. Like this name getting suggested message emphasizes that something asynchronous is happening, something is ongoing. While get status, that could be asynchronous or synchronous, so the name doesn't reflect that it's asynchronous. Yeah, it's really interesting. And I want to change this to fetch as well. I'd like the name fetch because it, first of all, it says that it's, well, I guess that's also a problem. Like get suggested commit message doesn't indicate that it's a mutation, right? So it should really be suggest commit message. That reflects better that it's an actual mutation. And then this is not getting, this is fetching. Or is it? Or you could, oh, I'm getting stuck on these details, but that's just the way I am. So you could call this like, if this is suggest commit message, it will be suggesting commit message. So let's call it that, suggesting commit message. Let's rename the symbol. And then suggesting commit message. And then let's call this suggested. That's the suggested commit message. Yeah, and this is also interesting. When, yeah, I guess we don't really need. Yeah, we'll just use the value there. But this is the thing with signals. It's like they are a wrapper around the value. So it's not really the value itself. It's not the actual suggested commit message. It is the signal of a suggested commit message. So what do you name your variables? Do you like put a signal behind every one of them to emphasize that it's a signal? But that feels like too much. Yeah, naming is really hard. But what I really like is just having some strong conventions and patterns as opposed to yeah, because that's the thing. Like, especially impact is quite low level, so you can't name things for the developer. They have to figure out for themselves. For example, a signal. A signal is just a value. It doesn't represent a query or a mutation or anything. It's just a value, and that value might be a promise. So it's totally up to you how you want to name things. While if you're using higher level abstractions like use query, you get the terminology for free, which is good. But the cost is that it's a higher abstraction, so you don't get lower level control of what you're trying to do. Yeah, it's really interesting. What the hell was I doing? I was just refactoring, naming some stuff. Yeah, let's separate let's put the signals together. And these are the cleanup things. I'm going to change this a little bit because I don't want to. Let's see. Why did I pass in a value to that one? What did I use it for? Oh, sorry. Value? Oh, it should be files. What the hell? Oh, sorry. I destructured it. My bad. Anyways. I just think it's a little bit cleaner to just put this inside here. And then we have our response. And then we're just going to do this. And the files are really oops. And then here we want to return a response because that's what we expect from this thing. Okay, so now we have our signals. We have our it's kind of annoying how we have this disposer thing where you can't like, I can't call this and then like just return dispose because it's bound to its disposer, which is really annoying. That's what I don't like about classes. Everything's like bound to something, like all the methods. So it makes you split up your code quite unnaturally. Wonder if this can be better. Yeah, I don't think so. Anyways, and then we have our observers, so that's nice. Let's put our getters up there and our methods down there. And then for layout, that one's pretty straightforward. Use session context. Yeah, we just clean that up a little bit. So we have our records or our caching here. impact router. That's doesn't have to say impact router. Create router. Oh yeah, it's crashing. Of course. Anyways, let's keep that. We're creating the API, so this is nice. This could also be its own use session context. Rename index. And then we have router. Oops. Let's just call it API. And then we're going to move. Let's see. So branch query, fetch branch params. Wait, use session context. Oh, what did I do? Oh, sorry. Oh, god damn it. I thought it was in the global context. This is the session context, which is fine. But we didn't have... Ah, god damn it. That's not the one I wanted to change. That one was pretty okay. Ugh. It was the global context I wanted to change. Let's move it back. Delete. Use session context. Use global context. That's the one I wanted to change. Let's see. And then we have our router. We have our API. So let's move this in here. So let's call this as create client router. And didn't I have like very specific APIs related to this? No, we just had the router. Okay. But that's not enough, is it? Like we need to be able to, oh yeah, I remember. We didn't add the observability of the router, but we can do this here. So we can still return the router, but well, not quite. Because we want current page would be a signal router dot current, or current route is the correct term. Current route. I'm getting some latency here. Let's see. Router. Let's call it current route. That's fine. And that's synchronous. And then we want to make sure that we oh, not testing library. Hello. Why aren't you listing impact context? There you are. And that will be router listen. New route would be current route.value equals new route. Cool. And then what are we using here? We're using current route, and then we're also using the query. So I guess we can say router dot, yeah, get queries. So return router dot queries. I'm not really doing anything else at the moment. So this will be a create router. And then we have create API. So let's, oops, copy that one. Export function create. Let's just call it create API. There we go, and then create API. That cleans it up nicely. And then we have create API. It's the same. Yeah, and then we have changing authentication, sign in, sign out, get picture instance. Yeah, so here let's call it like, yeah, I don't know, get fetch. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, what does fetch actually mean? Yeah. Yeah, and this should still just work, so we can restart the language server. So yeah, so this was just a little bit of refactoring, just reasoning about terminology, which is like always super tricky to do. So we could split the session context into like the branch, into branch and picture. And then we could say like picture.initialize. Okay, let's do that as well. So we're kind of following the trend here. Use session context. Index. So we would have branch TS and picture TS. And then we're going to move all the branch stuff. Yeah, so again, now we're getting into create branch, which is a little bit weird in and of itself. Oh, sorry, this is... let's see. Okay, so I definitely don't need the picture client stuff. We don't need context. Might need signal. Let's see. So we'll move the branches. Yeah, it's really weird that I call it create branch. Oh, naming is so hard. So what we're doing here is that we are... So we can just call this fetch now. And now this needs the API, right? So now how do I get the API in here? Again, it's like, okay, should I do this? And then API is return type of... Like, I really don't like this. I need to reflect on this. Create API. Type of create API. Yeah. I really don't like it. I guess what we could also do here is like... Well, sorry, I'm wrong here. Yeah, but maybe this adds to the confusion because, of course, I can just use the global context in there. Which, yeah, that's perfectly fine. So I can use like other... Oh my God, it's like, oh, it's super, super slow. And I wonder, is it my browser? What's happening here? Or is it the VM that's going? Oh my God. Let's see. API equals use global context. So of course I can just use other contexts here. But But if I want to use something from the existing context, it doesn't follow the same pattern. Maybe that's fine. But again, like now I was just confused, like, oh, do I have to pass in the API now? No, you don't. You can just use the other context. So yeah, no, I need to reflect on this. And then we have, yeah, and again, like export function create picture. Maybe I should just call it API and then, or context. Yeah, I could call it that, create picture context. And then we have initialize. So session context would be branch, create branch. And then picture would be create picture, where picture would be this. Oh, sorry. Picture initialize. And I don't need a global context there. Definitely don't need it here. I don't need this stuff. Okay. Oh, I did need the API there. Cool. So yeah, we have to restart language server. What did I call it? Router. Ah, okay, let's call it current then. So this one's happy. Are we all happy? Then we have the branch. Code editor, you're happy. Editor, pretty set. But here we want Git instead. And here we have Git fetch. So we could call this fetch status now. Let's just do that. I'm running through this. But this is also a thing, like this also increases the level of indirection, which I also don't like. So now, like, okay, I have Git here. I'm going to Git. Okay, where is Git defined? Okay, up there. And then, okay, here I have create Git. What the hell was I looking at? Or wait, if I were to, sorry. So if I were to fetch Git state, oh, I get straight to the Git state. Sorry, yeah. Yeah. So let's call it fetch status. And let's call this status promise. Fetch status. And then we have Git suggesting Git suggested. Wasn't that the name of it? And that's the name of it. Suggested commit message. Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. So here we have branch and picture, where we say branch.fetch, and we say picture.initialize. Wasn't it fetch? Oh yeah. Oh, because it's called branch here, of course. Damn it. What should I call this? just calling it branch data for now. Branch data, fetch, picture initialize, that's fine. Sidebar. So this will be layout now. I don't hate this. I like this. Yeah, this is just the API and then top bar. Okay, let's just see if it runs. Yeah, maybe this is fine. So if you want to yeah. Yeah, I probably need to restart the server because I moved a lot of stuff around. Right, nice. Yeah, I'm just gonna fix one small thing that we're calling is no message, which is okay. But pending is like, it was very subtle. Yeah, just let's make it less subtle. Cool. I'm going to just commit this. And then we're going to ask Alex to come in and just go through the code here and see what he thinks. This is kind of nice though. So we're creating this global context, making it discoverable from its consumption point. And you can make it as big as you want. But then we're composing it together using a pattern. Like, how do you name these things? Create API. Like, what are we actually creating here? Like, we're creating an API, so it will be create API. But yeah, then we have our session, which is responsible for figuring out what page you're on. And since you can be anonymous, we don't really care about that. But here we would block the user if we required you to be signed in. Yeah, and this should really be use session context provider. What would the key be here? Authentication. Do we have only two, unauthenticated and authenticated? Yeah. So we want to remount the whole session context whenever the authentication state changes. And then we have our session context where we have branch. Yeah, maybe we should just call it branches. I'm going to call it branches. Branches, create branches, and then branches. And then we have a specific branch where we go and we fetch branches. We can just call it branches. And then we create a branch context. Why are you complaining? Oh. Where's this coming? Where's branch DTO coming from? Oh yeah, of course, because now it's also interesting. Now these types are coming from the specific file. It's not coming from the context, it's coming from the thing within the context. Yeah, so now when you have that composition, well, I guess it's not that different from the previous stores pattern. Yeah, anyways. And then we have git here with our suggested commit message. That's clean. That's nice. And then all the things. Okay, so at least we cleaned up to like our current explorations. And then we'll see how well Alex understands this. Cool. Yeah, sorry for all the like just reflections on naming and stuff, but it's important part of APIs or API designs to reflect on how does the API affect the amount of reasoning and decision making you have to do for the actual implementation or consumption of the API. And it shouldn't be confusing, and there should be a healthy balance between you deciding your own patterns and terminology, and also like it just being handed to you through the API itself. And this being very low level, there's a lot of opportunity for creating patterns and terminology. And in some teams, that works, and in other teams, it doesn't work. It depends on how disciplined you are, and if you have someone who kind of pushes for these guidelines. And so that so if that's the case here, like if that's the discovery that we might have some preferred patterns and terminal, or at least that should be documented. Like what is our pattern and usage of terminology, and use that as an example, and then users can, or other teams can adopt that, or they can create their own. But the point is, does it need to be part of the documentation? And I think it does when it's so low level. Yeah. Anyways, I'm happy about this. So let's stop this, and then we'll see each other on Thursday, I guess. Cool. Bye for now.